what exactly is the ego? Have you asked yourself that question? Without knowing the answer, you are likely to take certain unacceptable behaviors, unloving behaviors, as normal. Like, oh, well, I can't do anything about it. That's how I am. When in truth, you can absolutely do something about it or the other person you're dealing with, because these behaviors are usually rooted in fear, anger, or some sort of emotional pain. So some people think that the ego is everything about who we are. Some people think that the ego is our persona, the personality that we are. Other people think we are, the ego is attached to the body, so the ego is like the body. Other people think the ego is our mind. And others yet again say the ego is a bit of everything. And I want to really highlight that the ego is a very specific part of our mind. And it's very important to understand how it functions. Most people have probably noticed that the ego mind is kind of speaking like, oh, when I'm going to get the husband or the wife, the house, the new car, the new job, more money, then I'm going to be happy, then I'm going to feel fulfilled, and then I will feel loved. Until it wants more yet again. And that is a typical ego way of thinking. The ego also always thinks it's right, or it's better than, or worse than, and oh, poor me, I am so hurt, I need attention, give me some love. You know, these are the sort of the typical ways, the way the ego is portraying itself. You probably all know them. So we probably understand that the ego is a part of the mind, and that's why I call it the ego mind, in order to distinguish a bit between the ego mind and our conscious mind. Okay, so the conscious mind is basically our tool to help us make sense of our reality, to have reasoning, to have logic, to know how to work things out, maybe to calculate certain ways of, you know, doing things, project leading, taking goals maybe, and pursuing them. So the mind is our tool to help us create our reality. Nowadays, the mind has become very, very busy, and that is also part, or the reason why, is because of our ego mind has taken too much of our consciousness. And I will come to that later. There is a very specific characteristic that the ego mind that is different from the conscious mind. And that's the actual key element that we need to understand, that I will let you know at the end of the video. So let me explain again. So the ego is not the conscious mind, it's not the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is what we are usually not aware of, yeah? And it's actually our body. It's actually situated in our body or around our body. And the ego mind is also not our body, because our body has its own divine blueprint. It knows how to heal itself. It has its own intelligence, unless we are interfering with certain beliefs that, oh, I could never be healed, or nothing works with me, and I will always feel unsafe, you know, certain beliefs that are stopping our body from healing itself. But if we were not getting in the way, the body would be absolutely fine. So the ego mind is not the body. And the ego mind is also not our personality, like, you know, our character, the way we are, doing certain things, certain likes we have, preferences we have, skills and talents we have, the influences of our stars that we are born under. All of that is our personality, and that's something we are given in this lifetime. And that's not the ego mind either. The ego mind can't influence those things. So the ego mind is something that is living in our mind, and it is like an entity that is actually made up. It is constructed from past experiences, usually from our childhood experiences, and from what people around us have said to us, and also are still saying to us. So the ego mind is actually a part that thinks or perceives itself as separate. And that is the unique way of thinking that only the ego part has. And because it thinks it's separate, it is basically like a drop in the ocean of infinite love, and all it wants is to be loved and to be supported and praised and have lots of money be given, and kind of it really wants to be part of that infinite ocean of love and peace and joy, which is our true consciousness, our true infinite consciousness that is able to supply us with everything that we need. But the ego perceives itself as a drop in the ocean. So it perceives itself as separate, and it is adamant about that, and it can never be part of the infinite ocean. This is sort of like a very ingrained belief that the ego has. And there is a reason for it, because originally, yes, we do need to have the ego. Because when we come here in body form, we come here as souls who are living in our bodies, and we come to experience our unique selves in these bodies. So therefore we need to have this separator, the ego mind, that is giving us the illusion of being separate from the unity consciousness that we are really in truth a part of. So the ego is very necessary to have our human experience. And that's how we all started. And that's all fine. There, in that stage, at the beginning, original stage, there's nothing wrong. There's never anything wrong with having the ego. But over the millennia, over years and thousands of years, the ego has grown in importance. Through education, through social behaviors, through really a lot of pain, inner pain, that we were never allowed to, or even we were never taught to heal ourselves from that pain. And the more pain that we accumulated over the generations, the larger the ego became. It's usually very much attached to victimhood, the ego mind, because we've got so many wounds in us from generations. And the ego mind is attaching itself to that. Because the ego thinks it's separate. It has no way of being fed or fueled by our divine consciousness. Because it believes it's separate, and therefore it is. That's how powerful perception is. And because of that belief that it's separate, it has got nothing, no supplies, no love in itself, no love for itself. It always thinks it needs love from other people, or it needs approval, or it needs a pay rise. It needs to rise up the ladder of social acceptance. It needs to have a better car, a better job, whatever. It needs to be better than. Or it thinks it's worse than others. So it's always identified with some sort of thing that it needs to have on the outside, because itself is empty. It has got nothing. It doesn't have love or peace or joy as an innate quality or feeling like our true self has. So therefore the ego is coming about as needy, and it is needy. It is always needy. It never has enough. when it does have the better job or the amazing car or the bigger house, then there is something else. It will still not feel satisfied or fulfilled because it is empty in itself. It has nothing. It is a fiction. It is an illusion that has grown over time into something really, really big, the ego mind. And most people are nowadays too attached to that ego mind, that because they are not aware of it, they have not seen its falsity, basically. They have not seen that it's coming from an illusion. And that's the important thing to understand about the ego. So if you don't want to have emotional pain of any sort, which is usually always coming from the ego mind, originally it stems from the childhood. Originally it was the inner child's pain, but the ego takes. The ego is a taker. The ego takes that pain and makes it its own and blows it up and perpetuates it by telling the same story over and over and over and over again. So the egoic mind has become like its own entity that's quite big and strong, and most people are attached to that. So they are not aware of their own true infinite self any longer, because the ego has taken center stage. And now we are living in a time where we are uncreating that again. We are diminishing the ego in order to live from our true self again, because we want to have peace and love and joy in ourselves. This is becoming the most important wealth to have in ourselves, really. Without peace, love and joy, we will never have a fulfilling life. We will never have a happy life, and we will never be at peace. So in the olden days, it's still there, but people were chasing after material stuff, to have peace and joy and love, maybe. But we are realizing now that those outside things, or even people, are never going to give us the love and peace and joy that we are really seeking. We've got to find it within ourselves. And the way to that is to understand how the ego works, to actually look deeper and go deeper and connect with those unresolved emotions that the ego is based upon. And by resolving them, the ego is diminishing. It has less ground to breed from. You see? This is the skill. This is the actual thing to do. If you want to empower yourself, you have to diminish the ego's center stage. We all have 100% consciousness. And we can choose where we are giving that consciousness to. Most people give, 60 to 90% of their consciousness to the ego mind, because they have not investigated what it is, what it does, and that it's actually an illusion. It is a separator and it is a taker. It is always needy, and that is very uncomfortable to other people and to ourselves. When we are based or living from neediness, we will never ever be happy, and we are creating a bigger ego within ourselves. So become aware of where and when you are acting from neediness, from maybe thinking you are right, from victimhood, from fear, and or shame or guilt or sadness. And you can probably be sure that this is the ego mind that has grown its own size, and it needs to be shrunk down to just being the initial separator from us, from me, the human being, and the unity consciousness. Okay, I hope this made sense. And if you want to have help with resolving those old childhood wounds that are feeding the ego, that's what I can help you with. That's my speciality, and I use energy healing for that, and really more awareness and spiritual wisdom to help you to recognize when you're not being your true self, basically. So to diminish the ego means to increase your own true self, living more from love instead of fear, having more joy instead of sorrow, sadness, victimhood, and living more from a feeling of abundance rather than lack consciousness. And so this is where we are going back to. And if you are wanting to do those things, if you want to have more self-love, have more happiness and fulfillment within yourself, this is a must do. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like and leave me your comments if you have got any questions, or if you've got a scenario you'd like to share, an issue you'd like to share, please do so. I love to connect with you and make videos about these challenges that you have. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your day.